So I'm an Airbnb host. I love it. I love having travelers come through, and I've met a whole ridiculous amount of them. Hey, Gus. Hey, buddy. Gus just touched our toes together out of love for each other. I had the privilege a couple nights ago of having two philosophy PhDs stay with me. And I really enjoy the conversations I get to have with people who are exceedingly intelligent because there's so much to learn. And one of my favorite questions I was able to ask is, are you able ever to turn your brain off? Because they're so thoughtful in their question answering that actually they immediately kind of go to like the third or fourth or fifth level of thinking on stuff. So it's like, oh, like Trump something, Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton something, and it's like they have the perspective of, well, you see, the thing about all of humanity is, and they kind of come up with this brilliant, deep answer sort of immediately. So here's a conversation I had with Lacey, and I suck at camera and stuff. I'm still learning how to have the focus of the camera be on the people, so sorry it's a little blurry, but I'm learning. That's why we're doing the daily vlog, so we can learn how to use the gear we have. Yeah, super exciting. Airbnb is awesome, and hanging out with philosophy PhDs is amazing. I highly recommend it. That's interesting. Wait, well, so let's start there. So when the mind is thinking, say that sentence again.
Well, there's like this whole, it's actually from a French, like evolutionary, like sociologist.
Yeah.
His name's Lloyd Grand. And he like has this whole sequence of events about like when everything is free. So like when the mouth is free, let's see what it is. When the hands are free from the ground to grab things, and the mouth is freed from having to grab things, so then you can start to form like noises.
Absolutely.
And then the mind is free because the mouth is free, and then like that's what kind of starts this whole development of consciousness. Is like the development of the body. So it's when we like stand upright, that the mind becomes free from all these other things. That's what he thinks.
Do you buy this?
I don't know. I think it's like best. I'm not an evolutionary psychologist, or a evolutionary biologist.
Yeah.
But I think it's like best not to think that there's one thing. So that's like that silver bullet thing. Is like never to say it's like one change. That makes like humans human, or like what makes humans special from other animals. Like you don't want to say it's like
reason.
One thing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but like how did reason develop? We don't know. Why do we have reason?
Philosophy PhD. Right? So. Okay. So I won't ask you. We don't have to talk about specifics because I understand you're in school. You don't want to. You have professors and stuff. But you're a fourth year philosophy PhD student.
That's right.
And you are already sort of writing your thesis, doing research.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And say what it is again. It has to do with.
Philosophy of mind is my research area broadly, and then also critical race theory. I used to kind of just do that, and now I do philosophy of mind. Yeah. So what is critical race theory? So it's really thinking about, or you can think of philosophy of race too. There's kind of there's two angles on it. Mm-hmm. So it's just thinking about like, do races really exist? Why do they exist? How did they evolve? Are they real? Are they imaginary? Are they socially constructed? So you can answer any of those questions.
Oh gosh.
Or like, how do we do we see? So I'm interested in questions of like, do we see racially? Do we think racially? Do we have like an encoded message immediately when we see someone of a certain race? Is there like a valence on that? Would be a question that I would ask. That's philosophy of race and philosophy of mind together.
Is there a valence?
Yeah. So like a valence is like a feeling or emotion or like
I did not know that. Okay.
So value and valence kind of go together, but the valence is like the feeling part of it. Like how does the value feel to you?
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And are you drawing a conclusion?
Yeah. So I used to think that. So there's this sort of the argument goes like this. So races are racial categories, and thinking about humans as being of different races is like necessarily pernicious. So it's going to lead to these hierarchical structures. So the second thing is, if that's true, if it's always going to be the case, then maybe we should just get rid of races, and then we wouldn't categorize humans in this hierarchical way.
Get rid of like the language to describe it, or
well, yes, that might be a first move. So like in Brazil, they've sort of done that. They've like made it illegal to like ask.
Yeah. So in Brazil.
Oh, okay, yeah. So. In Brazil, they made it illegal to ask about race on any forms or like for a job or anything.
Interesting.
And so part of the thought process of that is that eventually you would get rid of race as a concept, not just as a language.
Oh gosh.
But you would when you saw humans, it would be hard for you. Like if somebody asked you, categorize these humans, like you wouldn't categorize them by race.
So, okay.
Or like dark and light and things like that together.
Right, and that's immediately where I was going, is that with visual delineations of race, isn't that something that's unchangeable?
Well, in terms of like, okay, so even if it's plausible, but even if at some point we had, well, you might think that it's plausible that if, that at some point, even if there were a full spectrum of pigments, that you wouldn't categorize humans that way.
Okay.
Because we don't categorize on other things as much, you know.
With full spectrums of, yeah.
Like you could, I don't know. Like right now, we don't categorize on hair color. Like
yeah, it's not really. Oh, look at those brunettes. Yeah.
A little bit, but not like to the same extent, obviously.
Okay, so it's maybe it's not an absolute, but maybe it's more of like this is way less. Maybe to a much lesser degree, or would you say you could actually get rid of?
Well, so I used to think that, but I don't think that anymore because of this sort of racial cognition research. So like what happens, of like the sorting, what happens when we see different races? What's the origin of what happens when you like see people that have different skin colors than you, or different cultural or ethnic markings?
Yeah.
So now I think like from a evolutionary psychological philosophy of mind perspective that it doesn't make sense to think about it that way.
So what sense or what way does make sense to you?
So this is sort of the if this is how the mind is, or this is how the world is, or how humans are going to interact with the world, but it leads to consequences that we don't like. We're going to have to figure out what we're going to do about it.
Okay.
So if it's like a properly functioning cognitive mechanism, or the mind's functioning as it should in terms of the descriptive sense.
Yes.
But it leads to outcomes that we don't like, then what do we do about it? So that's some of the questions that I'm interested in.
Excellent. And are you exploring those in your thesis as well, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm looking to do. So the main topic is implicit bias.
Yes.
Because I think that that's a big piece of this puzzle of racial thinking. Because it's difficult to identify. That makes it interesting. For individuals to identify it in themselves. Yeah. Makes it at least a little more interesting. But it's also just it's an interesting puzzle, because you would think if you had negative attitudes or beliefs or desires or whatever toward a different race, you would know about them. So that's like a interesting philosophical question.
You would think that if you had those things, you would know about them. You would be self-aware.
Intuitively.
Yeah.
If you would say, oh, I have the belief that X, then you should at least you should be able to identify that belief. Or I have attitude X toward Y. You would think that you would be conscious of that attitude. So that's what makes it interesting philosophically. But I also think that it's important for like how we're going to move forward and making choices that we're happier about in the future.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm zooming out a little bit. Are you able to turn your wonderful brain off with some of these questions? Are you able to answer them without as much processing? Like, are you able to actually just like answer a straight question if someone's like, hey, something, political argument, Hillary Clinton, Trump, something, like, or do you immediately go like to like this space?
Got it. So you're just saying, like, if somebody posts something on Facebook,
sure,
or like says something to me at
a bar, yeah.
Okay. I would say usually I do jump right here, but if I'm really trying to engage, I try to like not use as much jargon or whatever.
Yeah.
But it starts to come pretty naturally.
What's your daily life?
Yeah. But I think it's important. Yeah. So this is a challenge for me, because I actually think philosophy as a way of life, and philosophy like as a practice that everyone should engage in.
Yes.
It's actually a challenge for me to go
Yes.
back and forth.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I wish I was better at just like coming up with an answer that's not full of jargon, not full of background information for the person at the coffee shop or bar or something.
Okay, those are my questions. Anything else you would say about anything that you just said?
Yeah, if you're interested in philosophy, don't be afraid of it, I would say. We were just talking about this earlier. But if you're interested in it, you should just go for it. But don't read the Wikipedia articles.
Oh, wow. Wait. You can't stop now. Why don't read the Wikipedia articles?
It depends on what you're looking for, but you should read the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
Yes, yep.
Is like the Wikipedia of philosophy.
This is
so
true.
You should stick to that.
Good. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Lacey.
Yeah.
That was awesome.